Hey, let's go back to the well. Let's talk about a topic I've talked about probably more times over the last 9 years than anything else. Uh, so 9 years ago today, as I'm putting this up, um, Zack Snyder's Batman vs Superman or Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice came out, and this is a movie that I've been very vocal about loving, and a lot of people have been very vocal about me being a fucking idiot for loving this movie, and that's fine. I understand. It's very polarizing. For as many of the counterpoints that I'll make to people when they jab at why they don't like this movie that I agree with, there's a ton that I don't agree with. There's a lot of stuff that I feel makes perfect sense, and is emotionally and intellectually captivating. As weird as that is to say about a Batman versus Superman movie, there is a lot that went into it that I feel was misguided simply because it is a Batman versus Superman movie, and I don't really think that modern moviegoers care for nuance. I don't think that they want the parallels to Excalibur or Ayn Rand or anything like that. I think they just wanted a superhero punch up movie, and it would have been very easy for Warner Brothers to do that. And then add to that the trying to quickly catch up with Marvel and add Aquaman and Cyborg and Flash and all that kind of stuff. Um, in the advertising, I wish they didn't show Doomsday in the second trailer. I thought it'd been cool if we didn't have that. But again, like all I said, it's a movie that people haven't stopped talking about in the last 9 years. It's crazy to think too that it has been 9 years because I remember the hype leading up to it. I ran the Anthony Wayne Theater, and I remember that night that everybody was really excited about it. And I remember when we were coming out of the theater, I was I have my own reason. I'll go into my own reason why the movie struck a chord with me that it didn't strike with a lot of people. There were things that people liked. They liked the opening. They liked they liked the warehouse fight scene and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think most people were just kind of like, what, like, why, and the Martha thing and all that, which I mean makes perfect sense to me. I think it was staged poorly, but in the narrative context of the film, it makes perfect sense. He became in that moment everything that he hated, and it's like a sobering moment for an alcoholic to that moment of realization. Scenes where he's staring at the costume like an alcoholic who needs the bottle is just really fucking cool to me. I loved Affleck's portrayal of a broken, bitter, violent man who, everything he's done for the last 20 years hasn't worked and he's lost his way. I like the idea of a Superman who can't, he's trying to do the right thing, but the world won't let him, and it leads you with the idea of why am I doing this? Like, and then kind of Wonder Woman's character is fractions of both of those. Like, she finally saw that it wasn't worth it fighting in man's world anymore, and she just stepped away and became a ghost basically. I like that whole idea of the deconstruction of it all. The fact that Superman just can't be good anymore. There has to be an agenda to all of it because that's the world that we live in. I love the interplay between Alfred and Batman, and there's so many great fucking lines in the movie. And there's a lot of stuff that resonates with me, and obviously Dark Knight Returns is my favorite Batman story. But for all the things I'm saying that I do like, there are things about it that I don't like, and things that when people say things, I'm like, yeah, you're right, But for the most part, I think that it says something that the movie 9 years later still has, people talking about it. And that's kind of like, The Dark Knight Returns in the beginning, in 86, maybe it came out, 85, 86. It was just like a bar fight. Like, you had the purists of the Batman character, the Adam West type people, the Silver Age stuff. And then you had that kind of like, kind of very gritty punk rock kind of vibe that was coming along in the 80s. And you had these two rival groups kind of facing off against each other over this one story where they're like, how could you do that to Batman? It's like, well, how could we not do this with Batman, And I kind of dug that about the entire thing. But with that said, I really just wanted to give my reasoning for, forget the broken Batman branding people stuff, the stuff about it that I liked, because I prefer a broken, jaded Batman. Growing up, I was born in 81. I probably got into comics like for real, like knowing exactly what was going on in probably like 85. Because before that, you get comic books and it's like, oh, it's cool. It's guys in costumes punching each other and stuff like that. But there wasn't really an eye for the mythology, really, as weird as that is to say. Like, I remember finally, like, understanding where what continuity was, and where people, especially in the Marvel universe, like who the X-Men, who was related to who, and all this kind of stuff. It's shit that I still remember to this day. But I would say it was around 85, 86 when I became like very aware of the continuity crisis was going on at that point, and started to learn and understand the mythology a little bit more. And around that same time, I'd say 89, right before Batman came out, my parents were getting a divorce. And you can go watch the Friday the 13th, the TV series episode, where I talk about how that TV show accidentally led to my parents getting divorced, and then people on Reddit went after me for it and say, what a fucking embarrassment, blah, blah, blah. Dude, not even just that video is embarrassing. I'm embarrassing way before that. But my parents were super young when they got married. My parents were super young when they had myself and my brother. And there was a level of immaturity, let's say. So as their divorce was going on, because of my father's infidelity and me having a half sister, go ahead, Reddit, make fun of me, I don't care. My brother and I basically were stuck in this weird position where we were staying at aunts and uncles' houses or our grandparents' houses while my parents were kind of fighting over their stuff. And my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, my mom and dad, they're like, just put them somewhere here, some comic books, give them comic books, and they'll just go sit over here and be quiet while we do what we're doing over here. And so that era, I was inundated with Frank Miller and Byrne and Perez and that version of those post-crisis DC Comics characters was the versions that to this day I still resonate the most with me. So as my world was falling apart for the first time, it's fallen apart way since then, but that's fine. And I always retreat back to those comic books. But as my life was changing so much, and we were in this state of flux, and there's people arguing all around us and stuff like that, I had these comic books, and they made sense. They were darker and they were grittier than what I was used to. There was a little bit more complexity to them, and even as a little kid, I was trying to understand the complexity about it's not just cool that he has a cool costume and a cool car and cool gadgets, but there's more to it beyond that, and this era also led to my falling in love with I don't know, like all more complex characters and storylines. That's where I very much navigated into Alan Moore and his Saga of the Swamp Thing type of stuff, which I absolutely fell in love with, and Grant Morrison and all that kind of stuff. I was gonna say Neil Gaiman, but not anymore. Like it's amazing to see also as you get older, so many of your heroes turn out to be complete and total scumbags. But those versions of like Byrne's Man of Steel and Miller's Batman Year One and Dark Knight Returns and Perez's reinterpretation of Wonder Woman, these were the versions of those heroes that I gravitated towards because it was normality at that point in my life when everything else didn't make sense. And obviously we took it too far in the 90s where we got into like the big tits, big guns, pouches, little feet kind of era of comic books. But I love that Image stuff when it first came out. Like I was big into Spawn when he first came out, and Savage Dragon and Youngblood and all that kind of stuff. A friend of mine just gave me some Valiant comics from the early 90s. I was like, I hadn't thought of those in years, and I was reading Harbinger and stuff. But again, it's also like, without being a fan of that stuff back in the day and being a little bit more intellectually curious about things that weren't just pow and bam and biff, led me into more of the small press stuff. Like, I discovered The Tick and Milk and Cheese and Cerebus and Elf Quest and all that kind of stuff through that. It's like a gateway drug. And, so my comic book reading was very much formed by that period of time when everything was falling apart, but okay, I got Batman, I got Superman, I got Wonder Woman, I got Robin. This makes sense to me, even if it's a little bit darker and a little bit grittier. You go into the '90s with the Dan Jurgens stuff. You know, it was very much, I think, tied into Batman versus Superman as well. So when I saw the movie, like I started to get like choked up a little bit because I was like, oh my god, this is that. While it's not for everybody, while not every, Batman shouldn't kill, and even though he killed in every other movie, and Superman should be smiling and saving cats out of trees and not be, conflicted about where his place is in this world. And Wonder Woman's the mythology of Wonder Woman being this goddess, and dealing with mythology of Greeks and Romans, and she's made of clay and all that kind of stuff. But like these versions of the characters that I now saw on the big screen, and the most beautiful versions of the costumes that I'd ever seen. You got a Batman that the dead Robin suit is in the Batcave. There's a whole world that existed before we got to this guy. There's that whole angle of, and again, going back to the Martha scene. I know I'm all over the place. I'm ping-ponging now because I'm trying to remember what I have said and haven't said in the past in this. The old show I used to be on, we did a DVD commentary track of Man of Steel, I think it was, and I had been drinking pretty heavily at that time. I was pretty unhappy when I was on that show for a long time, so I had to kind of drink to get through the many reviews that we did per day, or the other 50 million jobs I was doing for people then, because lazy, toxic environment. But I was at this period of time where my parents weren't really talking to me, and you have Superman in this movie, in Batman vs. Superman. I don't remember how we got onto the topic while talking about Man of Steel, but he's I don't care what happens to me, but save my mother, save Martha. And he says it the same way that Bruce's father said it in his flashback of Martha. And it made me cry, and I'm drunk and I'm crying. And then like the redhead picked me up and put me in her lap and swaddled me like a baby, because I was in a really bad place, and it's right, it started to lead towards that, nervous breakdown. But so I don't know. It's a movie that I think will always be something that I will always be thinking of and talking about. And there's so many interesting shots in it, and while I know it's not for everybody, while people are going to watch this and go, you're a fucking idiot, you don't understand Batman, you don't understand Superman, you don't understand Wonder Woman, whatever, maybe you're right, but my personal version of these characters in my own mind is what I saw on screen on that. And and for whatever people think of it, I'll always owe Zack Snyder and Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot and David Goyer and Chris Terrio and whoever else, Amy Adams, and all those people. I'll owe them for bringing me that version of them to the big screen. Something I never thought I would see. Something we will never see again, simply because the movie was so polarizing. But it touched me in a way that I didn't expect from a Batman versus Superman movie. It brought me back to a time when I became more focused on the lore and the mythology of it to escape what was going on in my life. And that stuff is escapism, and that's what it's supposed to be. And also, I think it's just extremely well made. I think that the ultimate cut obviously is the better version. The studio chopped it a lot. But you definitely tell that Zack Snyder has an eye for the visual. There's a lot of visually compelling images in that movie, and especially now as we look. I don't want to turn this into a Marvel versus DC thing, because DC has essentially decided this is it. We just want to make Marvel movies. There isn't that same level of stagnant, sterile CGI backgrounds in it. There was more texture to a Batman versus Superman, or his Snyder's Justice League as well, where it felt like the Marvel movies feel like a comic book. This felt like a graphic novel, and I found that to be really, really cool. But yeah, I don't know. I can't believe it's been 9 fucking years already. But every time I have to defend why I love the movie so much, from the visuals to the score to the interpretations of these characters, it always comes back to that same thing of little 1989 Newt, trying to make sense of the world around him. What's what Batman says? He's like, the world only makes sense when you force it to, and that's kind of what I felt at that point. Was this thing that could ground me and could keep me in a state of like up head above water as everything else was falling down around me. So for that, I will always love this movie. I'll always be very appreciative of this movie. And again, we'll never get a movie like this again. It's pretty obvious. But I'm glad that it existed, and I'm glad that we had a chance to get that. And I do hope that some people eventually will look at it again with different eyes and kind of understand, and maybe not understand it, maybe not like it, but kind of at least take away some of the cool elements that they were able to put it like in the movie. Like the opening where it mirrors the scene from Man of Steel is brilliant. I think that's great. The warehouse fight scene, you know, all the, like I said, all the interaction between Batman and Bruce Wayne and Alfred is great. You know, I just love when he's like, you know, I'm older than my father ever was. You know, this may be the only thing I ever do that matters, and that's such a like this would be a good death from The Dark Knight Returns kind of thing, and just the suit, and I don't know, I loved it. But yeah, and again, I get it if you didn't like it. I get it if you don't like Zack Snyder. But, you know, it gave me something that I never thought I would see on the big screen. It brought me back to a time and a place in my life. And it gave me an emotional pop, which I didn't expect from a Batman versus Superman movie. And for that, again, 9 years later, I still will mention the movie at least once a week. Or it'll come up in conversation or something, or think about an image from it or something. And you can't really say that about a lot of these movies anymore. They all kind of come and go. Like I forgot Blue Beetle existed. I forgot Aquaman 2 existed. I forgot you know that Shazam 2 happened. The Marvel movies, I know I just saw Captain America Brave New World like less than a month ago, and I was like, what the fuck happened in that? Like, who's the new Falcon? Where'd that guy come from? You know, and I know it's from the TV show, but I'd forgotten about the TV show. It's become very disposable. And even if you hate something as much as most people hate Zack Snyder, his movies, you're still talking about them, you're still arguing them, and there's something to be said about that. You know, it's a raconteur type of thing. So yeah, 9 years later, man, Batman versus Superman, Batman v Superman, Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, and I collected a whole bunch of the merch from it. You know, just Batman in a fucking trench coat in the post-apocalyptic wasteland is cool. I don't care what anybody says. I never thought in my life that I'd get to see parademons in anything, you know? Yeah, so I don't know. That's, I just wanted to sit down real quick and just kind of give my excuse as to why this movie meant so much to me over the years. And while I'll always defend it, and while I'll always be happy that we had it, and bummed that we never got to see a continuation of the Justice League story, like, you know, you see that dark side and that apocalypse, and you're like, fuck, I want more of that, you know? I want to know why the Joker and Darkseid and all that are the Joker and Deathstroke and all are working with Bruce, and how the time travel element would have worked of them sending Barry back to the wrong time, being too early, and then the kind of injustice stuff that would have happened. And now I'm just naming things and being weird for anybody who doesn't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But yeah, all right, that's it. 9 years. Time flies when you're doing whatever it is that I do.